In the next few videos, we're going to be talking about class objects or classes and the definition of classes and how they are used to create objects. And I think we talked a little bit about it before that C also had objects, but that was anything that you could create in C. That was a variable, anything at all, an integer, a character, any of those things were considered to be objects. Well, we use the term a little differently now, and we're talking about object-oriented programming and getting into more detail. An object is when we instantiate a class, and a class is just a description of what a object will eventually look like should we decide to make one. Now, all this object-oriented business, that's called a modular programming method. But C++ will support both procedural and modular methods. It does, however, make it easier for you as a programmer to implement and use modular methods. Though I want you to know that everything you learned in C and C programming still does apply. But there's more. C++ supports and encourages modular methods. Again, that makes them easier for you to implement so that you can use these modular methods without going out of your way. Actually, the compiler will enforce some of these things for you if you let it. There are switches and things that you can set on a compiler to make it not check these types and do various cast checking and things like that, but you don't want to do that. I mean, that defeats the purpose. That's only if you need to code something in C using a C++ compiler. So here in the procedural world, you would decide which procedures you want and then get the best algorithms that you can find. And that's normally what we have been doing for many, many years in programming. You would decide top down, step 1, step 2, step 3, what do I need to do to perform a particular task? And that's a procedure. You have a process that you go through, or a procedure, one thing after the other. And that's essentially what we've been doing all these years. And we tell the computer what to do first and second and third and so on. Now, object-oriented, though, that's a whole different way of thinking. In object-oriented, we decide which modules we want. We have to think of them as kind of different containers, almost black boxes that do whatever they're going to do. And then we partition the program into these modules so that the data that is necessary to be used by a module or an object is hidden inside that module. Very little information is really going to be available to the outside world. This is a whole new way of thinking, and this is the object-oriented programming paradigm that they call it. And this allows objects to interact like they would in the real world. If you have two cars on the road, they interact in certain ways. They don't interact by their pistons connected to one another, or carburetors, or fuel injection, or any of those internal things. They connect to one another by turn signals, which are, of course, controlled by the driver, the operator of the thing. So those are external or public bits of information about the object, or in our case, about the car, that are shown to the world and known to the world or made public. Other private things the world doesn't need to know about, but the vehicle itself, the car itself, or the operator of the car needs to know a little bit more. So these objects will be self-contained objects and will only interact with each other in very specific ways. When we have a class object, when we have a class created, the class will contain both the data inside the class, the members, they call it, and the functions, which are known as methods, that will work on that data. Now, we saw something very similar to this when we had our structures back in C, our struct. A struct with functions in it is very much a class. That's a class definition. We have some new things, though. We can make some methods public and some methods private. And there's even a protected method in data, and we're going to talk about all of these as we go. But public methods are, like I said, like the turn signals, things you can see from the outside. Private methods would be only usable by other methods within the class. Some data variables, certain things about the object are available to the public to be read, even to be set and changed. And some of those data are private as well, where we only want the class to be able to deal with those variables. Obviously, as we get through this, as we look at data members and member functions and methods and all of that sort of thing coming up, we're going to get into all this in detail. But you need to really start thinking about this, that object-oriented programming, you're going to be creating self-contained modules. Those classes will be able to communicate with one another through specifically defined methods and public members of data, and those are called interfaces. When one class can communicate with another, or a class allows itself to be manipulated in some way, that's through an interface. And we will show that we can have multiple interfaces to a single class. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Hang on for the ride. It's going to be a good one. And we're moving right along to the next video.